And welcome to Down the Alley. Special guest for, or I'm going to call it an emergency press conference, breaking news. We've got Lacrosse Labs, Eric from Lacrosse Labs here, and we're going to launch a new partnership, a new kind of friendship that has developed quickly over the last week. But before we get into that, Eric, welcome to Down the Alley.
Yeah, thanks, Austin.
It like I said, this kind of came to fruition. I think the first DM was probably about a week and a half ago. I learned about Lacrosse Labs 2 weeks ago. Shout out Jack Dessler, the new and improved Prior Lake U12A coach. It used to be me. Now it's Jack Dessler. He's already contributing to the program, bringing ideas such as Lacrosse Labs to the table, and kind of from there, I slid in your DMs, and a couple more conversations happened, and now we're here. So, for those who don't know, what is Lacrosse Labs? Who's Lacrosse Labs?
Yeah, so Instagram, I guess, is just the way business really happens, right? We can throw out Outlook and Gmail and whatever else, and
Yeah,
we'll stick to the Instagram DMs and
we
get
we
things
we
done.
can get a date. We can get a business partnership. We can get a podcast role. It goes down in the DMs.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah, so Lacrosse Lab, I do have to correct you, no S. So when we
Uh-oh.
if anyone ends up searching for Lacrosse Lab, it is lacrosselab.com. Um, we are we're a small team of two. Started business in 2018, or I should say, we started work on this little passion project of ours in 2018, and really probably looking ahead of spring 2020. We felt like we had our full solution ready to go. Saw some encouraging January, February, first week of March,
Perfect timing.
and then unfortunately lacrosse season got canceled that year. But since then, even through COVID, we've constantly been making steady progress on the tool. And when we say the tool, right, our bread and butter is really, we're kind of an online whiteboard. And from that, we've seen our functionality expand into more team management capabilities, but always really looking back to what are the things that a coach is going to need, right? Really to help educate their players outside of practice, save them time while they're at practice, keep practice more lively so that we're spending less time standing around doing dry run stuff and getting into live reps much faster. And so building on top of the playbook, we've started introducing more team communication capabilities, a team schedule. That'll get us into practice planning and scouting reports and things like that. So, at our core, we're really a team management tool, but with a priority on what are the needs of a coach, right? And so that's who we are.
Yeah, and that's how, that's naturally how it came up in conversation. We're working on the player packet for our Prior Lake youth team. We're putting a player packet with rules and just, kind of getting everybody organized with the coaches and everything. And, Dessler came to me and was like, "Hey, check this playbook out." And I'm like, "Yeah, this looks awesome. How can we do it?" And he's like, "Oh, it's on Lacrosse Lab, no S." And we're I'm starting to play around with this, and then I show Ted it, and we just kind of fell in love with it. So like you said, the playbook, I think is your bait, and then it reels you into everything else that is super cool that I think all of our listeners are going to love.
Awesome.
So for those watching on YouTube, I highly recommend, if you're on podcast, it'll be a decent listen, but probably transition over to the YouTube here. As Eric has as a deck, and we're going to do a demonstration of the playbook of the app, and all the different technologies that Lacrosse Lab has.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Austin. Yeah. So I'll just cover this deck really quickly, just so I make sure that I hit all the talking points and hopefully address some questions that that might come up for the listeners. But like I said, right, really our focus is on team management software that helps coaches be better at coaching, right? Saving time, and actually saving time teaching your players, right? So really the gist of this is we can build our team playbook, flipping all over the place. We can build out our team playbook, share plays before before your players show up, so that they've got a rough understanding of what they're supposed to be getting into. Communicating with players, so constantly circling back and making sure that we know what the expectations of a practice event are. Seeing what players are actually looking at, right? So we can actually monitor what players are looking at, how frequently they're looking at plays. And we wouldn't be a modern application if we weren't available in the App Store and Google Play Store, right? So usually what we will talk to coaches about is designing is probably best happening on the desktop through the website, or we've really been spending a lot of time on the iPad application as well. And I can actually flip over and give a quick demo of draw mode, which we can do on the iPad.
Yeah.
But then what we see is players will generally be exclusively using the phone app, right? Where they're basically RSVPing to events, they're looking at plays. It's more of a view only access for players there.
Yeah, a couple questions and a couple things I've noticed, in my first week or so on your software. One, player accountability. I think that's one of my favorite things about Huddle is, you get to see how much video they're watching. What are you seeing, or what kind of statistics are you able to see of your players on the app?
Yeah, so when we come back to player accountability, I think it's something my partner and I really focus on a lot. I think as lacrosse coaches, there's always a reason for us getting back into the coaching world, and our initial involvement with the game was probably as players, and we want to give back to the game, which I think probably contributed so much to us personally, and a big piece of that is just translating, like, what are the lessons that we pick up in lacrosse, and how do we translate into beyond college, professional lives, and whatnot. And I think accountability becomes really that cornerstone of what athletics in general can teach young kids. But with what we're able to look at specifically in the tool, so again, we've got the team schedule. So there's the RSVP component of that. We can also take attendance. So it's kind of the flip of player tells you that they're planning on being at practice versus the coach is actually going back and jotting down who was there and who was not. On the playbook itself, right, we can see which players are looking at plays, how frequently they're looking at plays, and when the last time that they looked at a play was. So this actually came about. So background, I was coaching U13 really when we started building the application. So a lot of the inspiration for various pieces of functionality ties back to what did I need out of an application at the time.
Yeah, that's
I
the way
was
to do
running
it, right?
short. Yeah, absolutely. At a minimum, we were going to be a company with one customer.
Well, you got two
Turns
at least
out,
now.
yes, turns out we were onto something. But yeah, you go through the early part of your spring season. I was coaching club, so I had about 3 hours a week with my guys, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks to prepare before our first play day. We absolutely did not get to installing man up, man down for our first play day. So the Friday night before, I pushed out an extra man offense. Said, "Hey, first 6 guys that look at this, you guys get first pass on dry running it and warm up for our play day tomorrow, and you're going to be running extra man." Right. So
How many lawn
there's
poles made it?
the one with the big shot, unfortunately. um, So yeah, and really the hope is to continue to build this out. We've got our eyes on really everything that's going to go into the day to day of a coach, right? We want to make sure that the players are constantly engaging with the tool. We understand that there might be times where, again, our whole motivation is a lot of club coaches are probably limited to like 3 to 4 hours of practice time a week. You're not going to get to everything, right? So you got to really maximize and push your players to continue to develop on their own time. So really thinking about how we could include things like daily workouts and things like that as well.
Yeah. One thing I want to shout out, and maybe you have a stat behind how much time you could save, you know, pushing out, hey, this is the practice plan. This is the drills that we're going to run today. Take if you don't recognize the name of the drill or it's a new drill, let's look. We can do a quick, walkthrough, but then jump into the drill. How much time is that saving coaches on a typical hour and a half, 2 hour practice?
Unfortunately, I'm just going to be able to speak from anecdotal experience.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think we can all recognize installing a new drill is an absolute practice killer,
Yeah.
right?
Kills it.
Especially when it's cold and windy, which I know a lot of the Minnesota listeners are going through this
Yeah.
time of year.
Yeah.
Um, and so, it's just those little things of like, hey, I need a line over there. I need a line over there. Oh, move back like 3 more yards, right? And so if you're spending any amount of time standing around at practice, uh, kids are going to get distracted regardless, right? And then not to mention when you're taking too much time talking, explaining, they're not getting the live reps, which are ultimately going to make them better, right? So, I mean, depending on how quickly you're able to get in and out of stuff, usually your first week is just going to of practice is just going to be a drag as you're getting everything installed. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've certainly sat through my own dry run practice where you're just listening to coach for like 15, 20 minutes at a time, just
Yeah.
trying to get him through the talking points. And you're like, what did we do today?
Yeah. Yeah. Or only half the kids can see your little whiteboard, like
Right. Yeah.
it's so many things go into it. Third question before we move on. Sorry if I'm kind of breaking your vibe here, but and this is actually a real question, but they're all real questions, but like you said, this is something I had written down. You said something about draw mode, and different features maybe on the iPad versus computer versus phone. And I started to iPad. I've done well. I've been able like to maybe is it called draw mode? I figured that out. I was trying to do on the computer. Is that two different features for two different systems?
So we were just inspired by the Apple Pencil.
There you go.
And so we were getting ready for LaxCon maybe 2 years ago, and we were like, what would be a cool way to showcase this live, since we were going to actually have a live audience. Usually we're doing demos virtually like this.
Okay.
And so we started playing around with draw mode. So what we'll do on the iPad is the application will actually interpret, the arrows and pass signals that you're sending to the app, and we'll interpret it in our own sort of language, right? So I
Yeah.
can draw a straight line to suggest the player's moving. I can draw a dash dotted line to show a pass.
Nice.
And so especially when you're talking about like, I just need to jot something down quickly, it really becomes a good solution. I attended a coach's clinic a couple of weeks ago, and ended up using Lacrosse Lab through the entire thing just to jot down notes. Uh, I'm mostly my background is in the men's game, but since we're a tool supporting men's, women's, and box, I'm going to take every opportunity I can get to learn the games of the other teams. So this was a women's clinic specifically.
Sweet.
Use the draw mode to jot down my notes and walk away with something meaningful.
Were you jotting down different plays or
Plays, scenarios.
yeah,
So I the one that I really liked was an overview on clearing.
nice.
And so, with the application, I can get into this a little bit in the demo, but we can, highlight certain areas of the field, right? So a general best practice is we want to clear opposite box side. We want to avoid the box unless we know it's safe. So, you can use, excuse me. We've got a feature where you can just highlight certain areas of the field to say, hey, this is danger zone. This is our preference zone.
Nice.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, love it. So is there any major differences, for a user using the iPad versus computer versus phone?
No.
Okay.
We are going to be pretty feature agnostic across the
Nice.
entire portfolio. Um, the one difference though will be where you're actually able to sign up for a team. So again, with the thought that the applications are generally going to be used by the players,
Yeah.
the sign up flow to create a team is only going to be available in the website.
Okay.
But your same account is going to carry through. You're going to have all the same information across, whether you're using the website, the Android app, or the Apple app.
Cool. All right.
All right. And then so just to touch a little bit on some of our features. Again, the Play Designer is our bread and butter, and we will go into what it actually looks like to build out a play. The second piece is the team schedule, right? Really trying to figure out what are the best ways to continue to make use of the play designer. So building out practice plans, scouting reports, but also being able to track those event RSVPs so we know who we're expecting at practice. And then the team message board, right? Which kind of pulls the whole piece together where we can send out messages like, let's be ready to run this at practice today. We can reprioritize the event and make sure that we're collecting those RSVPs. And then finally, practice plans, which also includes, so this is a good way for coaches just to show that they're organized so that they can send out practice plans ahead of time. But you'll notice on the right side there, we've also got this little Apple Watch animation. So the app will actually notify coaches throughout a practice session what's going on at practice, how much time they've gotten left in a certain portion of practice. But it's really just meant to give you those gentle nudges, not that you're like looking at your phone through the entire practice, but really, Austin, we made the joke when we were first catching up, like it seems like the shooting drills always run long.
Yeah.
The defensemen can only do so much footwork before they need to start guarding someone. So, it's really just meant to give those gentle nudges of let's stay on track at practice.
Yeah, I don't know if Scott Cater, shout out Minnesota lacrosse coach. I don't know if he's an Apple Watch guy or not, but he is by the minute coach. So he's gonna, I don't know, Mr. Cater, if you're listening, that you're gonna love that feature, keeping your staff on track.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so we can get into what the pricing is. But I will say, right, that this application is like we want people to be able to experience it, right? And so if we see a mix of coaches are just using it on their personal time because they're just trying to piece together how a drill works. We see a lot of instances of kids logging in, creating plays, sharing them with their friends. And so we've got this balance between you can have a personal account, which is really just for your personal space, and then all of those team capabilities upgrade into the team subscriptions. And so anyone can create a free account, get up to 10 plays. You can create, whatever type of play you want. There's not going to be any restriction on like the field diagrams or anything like that. If you want to get into the unlimited playbook, maybe your thoughts are running wild, that will come in at $5 a month. And then once we get into the team accounts, the most popular option, which kind of covers all the features that we talked about, is going to be the complete tier. And that's going to run $30 a month or $300 for the year. So you get a little bit of savings if you opt to go with the annual subscription. The one thing that we've really tried to keep in mind, I know paying for these extracurricular subscriptions, they're not for everyone. But I hope everyone can recognize that this is an attractive price. It's something that is near and dear to me, right? The game of lacrosse by itself it's an expensive game, and we're going to try and contribute to that cost as little as possible, right? So for a team, we're talking $30 a month. So if you're covering a roster of 25 plus 5 coaches, that should just break down to about $1 per player, right? And so we don't want to be super exclusive. Hopefully, the basic tier makes sense for a parent coach that's paying for this out of pocket, and hopefully the complete tier, the collegiate tier, is not going to break the bank for those school or club accounts either. All right. And so with that, we can go ahead and flip over to the demo. All right. So I set up a new team environment. So there's not a whole lot of activity happening in here right now, but when players come in, this is going to be their landing spot. They're going to see the message board. So depending on whether or not the coach has contributed to the message board ahead of time, that's really going to come down to situational stuff. As a new user, you will get kind of a brief tutorial, which will link you over to a video on our YouTube channel. This is how you create a new video or a new play. Here are some of the sharing options and just kind of introduce you to some of the capabilities. So generally that would be on the home screen, but I wanted to keep this demo nice and clean. But like we had mentioned, really the bread and butter of the tool is the playbook, right? And so if we get into into an offensive set. You can see we've got the Mountain Men. Thank you, Shutterstock, for giving me the image and color palette, and we'll just kind of work from there. But we can, with the complete package, we will also include all of like the team logos and branding and stuff like that, so you can tailor it to your team environment as well.
That's cool.
And from here, we'll just kind of go through what an animation looks like. In this case, we're just going to be doing a little 1-4 wheel for an offensive set. We're going to carry, reverse, pop, sneak, shoot, finish with a goal. And so that's kind of the basic output. But then also, if we get into, there's some more complex stuff that we can get into, right? So what actually originally inspired this particular idea was I was teaching man down defense to my U13. We were specifically looking through a 4-man rotation, and there were 1 or 2 guys that just were not getting the concept of you're not guarding anyone. You're kind of rotating with your teammates.
Yeah.
And so I was really just desperately looking for a way to be able to highlight, to an individual player, this is how you're going to be moving. You're not guarding a specific guy. So like we can highlight a specific player, and then in this 4-man rotation against the 2-3, we can see like, hey, he's not staying in that bottom right corner. He's going to end up ultimately top left, right? Yeah. After just a couple of rotations around the 2-3. So, really just giving players an alternative means to interpret what's going on. So that's, kind of getting into some of the more complex stuff that we can do. But then getting into actually creating a play.
You got to call it Syracuse. You got to call it Syracuse.
The blue and orange, huh? Actually, I since you guys are from the Midwest, I think subconsciously the color palette might be from the Bears. I was born in Chicago, so I grew up a Bears fan. So something about the blue and orange has always stuck with me.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to make too many friends dropping that.
So what I'll do here, just to demonstrate kind of a quick, 23 push look, to get started on creating a play, right? You kind of did it quickly, but we're going to have a couple of sets of predefined player packages that you can just drag out onto the field. So, you don't have to do it onesie twosie. And then you also bring out the flag, the ball icon. And then once you've got at least one blue player and one flag, you can click done. And now you're kind of getting into the builder mode. So from here, right, we'll kind of get into this 1-4 stack look. We'll drag this around, and all of the interactions here are drag and drop. All right. And so the way that we're building out these animations, we get a lot of feedback that usually the way people are doing this today is they're probably going to like PowerPoint and trying to piece together a bunch of frames. At least as an application of inspiration, I was doing the same thing and thought there had to be a better way. And so the way that we're introducing animations is using these frames, right? So at this point, I want to climb that ladder. And then when I'm ready to introduce the animation, I'm just clicking add frame down there in the bottom left corner. And you can see the timeline starts to build out as I build these motions. All right. So
that's how you do that. I was losing my mind because I could easily do that on the iPad, and I could not figure out how to do what you just did. I don't know what you would call that, but what would you call direction? That? Change direction. Yeah. So I couldn't. Yeah. I couldn't figure out how to do that on the computer. You grab it like in the middle. Okay. That was just that's what I was trying to figure out. That was kind of my question. I was like, could you not do that on the computer? Could you only do it on the iPad? So yeah, boom.
Just grab the midpoint.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you'll also notice as I have a move active, we got these sort of move adjustments pop up in the bottom right corner, right? So, if we're doing a dodge down the right side and we want to fade, maybe that's not like a hard change of direction, but we want to kind of float out and get space. And so the same thing will probably occur on the crease. Maybe we'll do a little cut through here.
Okay, I like that.
Right, and so we'll kind of do this little joker cut, come back to the ball. And we want our X guy getting a passing lane. And we'll bring this guy down, right? So a lot of things happening on this slide. We'll click through. Everyone's going to move into place. All right. And then maybe on this slide, we want a little bit of internal action, right? So I'll set this up screen, but I want that to be a pick. And then at the same time, I want to be passing across. And we'll come over the screen, same little move. So we'll come over the pick. Feed inside. And slam dunk on a crease, right? And so with that, that's kind of the basic mechanics of creating a play. And I will say we get a lot of feedback around like, hey, it would be great. You know, obviously not every play is going to work to perfection the way that this did. And there's going to be opportunities for interpretation to happen, right? So
Yeah.
on this frame specifically, after we make the dodge, right? Really, option one in this particular play is you should be dodging to score, generally speaking, unless we're trying to eat up some clock. And so if I circle back to the pass, you'll notice the move and the pass have these drop downs. We'll throw in a visual indicator, right? So we can throw it at the goalie. And so as long as we've got certain options that we're looking back at, right? Really, this is just a suggestion to the dodger. We do not necessarily want you pushing it down to the X attackman. You got some information to interpret, but if you know we're giving this guy the green light, we should really be highlighting your dodging to score, and then maybe option 2 and 3 are the low crease, high crease, right? And then finally, you know, that push pass down the alley is really probably option 4, and then if we're really in trouble, they've got a good slide package. We got to roll back up top and probably redodge down the other side, right?
Yeah,
and so
that option feature is one of my favorite things that I've found on the app so far early. Like you're not just dodging down the alley and passing it. Like if you're wide open, shoot the rock. If the guy on crease is wide open, give him the rock. So the option feature was awesome. Really like that feature.
Good. And so usually the feedback that we get on top of this though is it possible for me to create multiple branches? And so we push back on that. I think one of the advantages of our tool is that it's once you get into it, we give you the right amount of flexibility and not necessarily endless amount of flexibility, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, ultimately our players are going to be best when they're getting out onto the practice and learning these things while they're playing the game. So sitting down and saying, oh, this is option 1, this is option 2, and these are all of the passes that should be happening, right? We kind of want to avoid getting so scripted in that way.
Yeah.
And so really our intent here is like, hey, over the course of a play, you know, maybe you're following the 2-pass redodge rule. There's going to be certain times where you're just a swingman and you need to get the ball back to space. And then there's other times where you're the distributor or the creator. And so we want to highlight those instances where you've got the green light, so to speak, right? And so in this case, we're just going to highlight you've got options here, but then as we move over to the next frame, right? In this case, things are probably going to be crowded because the defense is still here. Let's just swing the ball to the opposite side and keep playing.
Yeah, we can't turn this into what's like the Marvel where they've got you can go back in time.
Multiverse.
The multiverse. This isn't the multiverse.
Granted, I have put out a YouTube video that if you want to get into the multiverse of lacrosse, within the playbook, you can set up folders, right? So if I wanted to create a folder called Syracuse, I can come back then and name all of my plays, option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, whatever. So there is that flexibility. But I think going to that next step of like players can choose their own adventure, so to speak. You know, it's something that we could do. We push back a little bit on whether or not it is necessarily the right thing to do.
Yeah, we can't be robots here. We gotta have a little bit of free play, a little bit of decision making. flexibility. It's a little bit of Mike Tyson. You can have a plan, but
Until
how's
you
your
get
plan
right.
until you get punched in
Don't
the
get punched in the
face?
face. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that's kind of the basic mechanics of drawing up a play. In some cases, you might want to add some additional documentation. So when I was originally setting up the play, um, you saw that there was an opportunity for me to put in a play description. I can also tag the plays with certain things, really just for the sake of keeping you a little bit more organized. And then on the on the frames themselves, we can actually document notes in a couple of different ways. One, if this is going to be a little bit more complicated, maybe we just want to just add comments on the frame itself. Um, Alternatively, right, we can use this little comment widget in the builder, and we can drag that comment onto the field, right? So like, especially if we're just looking for certain language, one more, this will just give you a small little text box, throw it on the field, um, and we can communicate verbiage that way.
I like that. Is
Uh,
is it easier? Would you say it's easier to do some of those things like adding comments and whatnot on a computer versus a phone or a iPad?
that as cool as the draw mode is to show in real time, what I end up always struggling with is like typing on the
Yeah,
iPad. It just
yeah.
feels a little bit clunky to try and type while you've got a floating device, so to speak. So especially when you're getting into the more detailed stuff, yeah, I think the computer ends up being the best way for general content creation and refinement.
Okay,
And then the applications really make a lot of sense when we're just coming in to consume the information.
nice.
Um, yeah, so those are the basic mechanics of the play. I had kind of alluded to being able to drop certain shapes onto the field if we wanted to highlight certain areas of the field. So I know I've got this dead ball end line clear included here, and we can flip this over into full screen mode. So you've got a little bit more real estate to see the information. But in this case, right, we want to highlight this is where we want to be clearing the ball. We do not want to be going near the box side. So, we can drop visual indicators onto the field if we want to highlight certain areas of the field. So also defense, maybe you want to highlight the defensive hub, make sure that your guys are always folding into that middle point. So there's a lot of flexibility that we can throw in here as well. And then if I go back to Syracuse, unfortunately, I don't have like YouTube pulled up, but the nice thing about the lacrosse community and is there is a lot of content out there that's available for free, and we've probably all experienced it, but for some reason, me teaching a bunch of kids as Eric Shell does not land the same way that Coach Danowski delivering a talk on the exact same topics is going to deliver. So I know there's a ton of content out there for like Notre Dame and other tools out there. So if you find anything on YouTube that kind of translates back to certain concepts that you were trying to teach, we can also embed video into our tool, right?
Nice.
So I can just grab the URL from YouTube, drop it in here, and that way your players will be able to see kind of ideal state using the diagrams. And then if you want to find, like a play clip or something of a college team running it live, you can drop that in as well. And so your players will be able to see it both ways.
Do what types of videos do you think coaches add the most? Do you think they add if it's a play, do you think they just add like live video of that play being run or do they add themselves maybe talking about what's going on the play? If that makes sense. Like would I record a video of myself saying, "Hey, this guy's going to dodge down the alley, here are his options," or would they just put a video of YouTube of Syracuse doing it?
I've actually seen it done both ways.
Okay.
A couple of years ago, there's a group down in Texas that put together some really awesome videos where they kind of flip between kind of giving a demo of a drill or a set using Lacrosse Lab, and then they flipped over to into a live demonstration of their team practicing it.
Okay.
And so I think in a lot of cases they were actually just embedding it. The group was Drip Lacrosse, and I know those videos are still out on YouTube today. So if you end up searching for Drip Lacrosse, they put out some really cool stuff using Lacrosse Lab a couple years ago.
Cool.
From Dripping Springs, Texas. I actually finally got to meet the guys at LaxCon this past winter, but yeah, they did some pretty awesome stuff.
Right on. Talk about the folders, because I think that's something that you kind of mentioned a little bit, and I think it's going to be another tool that I found really useful of staying organized, putting your different, as you're building out your playbook and adding different things in, having those different folders, I think is another feature that the coaches are going to love.
Yeah, so I'll flip back over to my team playbook, and actually one dynamic that I've kind of skipped over that some of the listeners might experience if they end up upgrading to a team account. So when you initially sign up, you get a personal playbook, right? And so this is all going to be basically your draft folder. So as you're just brainstorming, everything lands in your personal playbook. So that Syracuse play that I was just drawing up does not actually exist in my team playbook until I put it there. All right. So I'll actually do that, right? And in this case, we can also select the audience. So who is the play, who can actually see the play once it gets there. So maybe you're still collaborating with your coaches on how we want to fine tune it, or it's just ready for everyone to see. In this case, I'll say share to the whole team. We're going to bring Syracuse over. And now when I flip back over to my team playbook, I've got Syracuse dropped into my main folder. All right. And so I've also gone ahead and pre-set up an offense, defense, and drills folder as well. All right. And so Syracuse is going to be an offensive set. We're going to click move to folder, find our offense there, click confirm. And now when we flip into the offensive group, we can see Syracuse, right? So depending on, how you want to be distributing content, right? Just tell the offensive guys you're going to be looking in the offense folder, tell your defensive guys you're going to be looking in the defensive folder. And, there's not that informational overload. But we can also nest folders, right? So in this case, I've got a 2-3 sweep, a 2-3 push, and then Syracuse. Those are all going to be more 6-on-6 offenses. And then I've got 1-4 wheel, which is that man up offense. So I can go ahead and create a man up folder, clean this up a little bit, move the folder, drop it into man up, right? And so just kind of using the folder hierarchy to guide your players to having a little bit simpler experience in the playbook.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think thanks for that demonstration. And yeah, I think that every coach is going to love the folder system and being able to just stay organized and group everything together.
All right. And so that's about it for the playbook. But I will say, right, a lot of users come into the tool and they're just looking for like starter content. Whether it's I don't want to take the bit of time that it'll take to learn this, or I just want something to show me how this can work. So we recently launched the community playbook, where I can basically look at user contributed content right now. This actually was just released maybe a month ago, so we're still developing the content repository here. But I can scroll through here and select, basically copy any play from here over into my personal playbook, where then I can freely manipulate what that content is. And then the other path, which I won't be able to get into a demo on, but I would imagine a lot of your users are very familiar with Powlax. Patrick at Powlax has put together a repository of like 500 or so plays. He's got a huge deck of content where kind of shared customers of both Powlax and also Lacrosse Lab users can draw content from his set, reshare it to their team playbook. And so you don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. He's also, better at using Lacrosse Lab than I am at this point. And so all of his content is super polished, really clean. And so, he's got a lot of stuff in there as well. So, um, so since I will spend a little bit more time on the play designer, just because, that's kind of the differentiator for us. But, I know there are a lot of other more like team management tools that you're probably going to get out of like League Apps or Sports Engine, which is really kind of built for the administrator. Team Snap, which I think a lot of parents love, just because you can like share images and stuff like that. So when we get into the team schedule, all right, this should feel pretty familiar. But we've got two methods to create events, right? The first one would be create a series, right? So maybe I want to come in here and create a practice series where for the next 2 weeks, we're in the preseason. We're going to be practicing every day at 3 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we'll say we're going to be at USA Lacrosse. And we can click add series. Before I move on though, so one of the features that we will have, since in certain age groups, we see a lot of parents that are signing up for the app on behalf of their players, right? So email becomes a little bit more relevant to those users. So when we send this out, we can click the send event reminder email the night before any practice session or game session or anything like that. Everyone's going to get an email. But also for users that have the application, the app is also going to be sending out these notifications as well. So, there might be a bit of redundancy happening there, but depending on the audience, you might want to see, the email, which is going to include all of the event details. Plus, if we add like a practice plan, that will also be included. So for club coaches that really want to show that they're organized and they've got stuff together, that would be a great tool for you, just showing, we're ready to go for your kids tomorrow. All right, but from there, I'll go ahead and click add series. It'll take a second just to generate all of these events. And once that finishes, right, we've basically got our next 2 weeks of practice events loaded. And then alternatively, maybe your game schedule is going to be, it's going to vary because you're going to be at different locations, odd days of the week, things like that. So we'll just pick a Saturday down the line, play under the lights. We'll go back to USA Lacrosse headquarters. We can add additional documentation. So, depending on, the event, right? Maybe we're at a tournament and we want to document, hey, this is going to be at this complex, but we're on field 5, right? So you can add additional information there. And then we can also add our opponent. They're going to be the bad guys.
Hate those guys.
So no, they're the worst. All right, and so this ends up landing us on the event details page. So again, we've got kind of all of the event information. We've also got the attendance tracker, so coaches can kind of come in, track their own attendance, and then we've got the scouting report. And so within the scouting report, we know that the amount of information that, especially at the high school level, how much scouting content we've got is going to vary. So we can make this as open-ended and complex, or as simple as possible. So we can ingest a roster. If you've got everything on like a Excel spreadsheet that you get from like Max Preps or something like that, you can upload that. You can upload team record, team stats, or just get into the phases of the game, right? So in this case, we're covering their offense. Maybe we want to link over to some huddle video, so we can drop that huddle link in here, and then we can just jot down some high level notes. So a lot of and this is actually going to be a common input box. So anywhere that you see add drill or play, we'll also pull up plays that are already in your team playbook. So,
Nice.
In addition to my offense, defense, drills folders, maybe you also start building out folders for each of your opponents, which is going to house the scouting report. So in this case, we'll just say, they run this 2-3 sweep a lot. That'll pull that play plus the description of the play. And in a second, once the the preview image generates. You'll be able to open that up so you don't have to bounce all over the application. And then we can also add personnel. All right, so we'll go number 31. He plays midfield. John Smith. He's going to be guarded by Monique. And then we can say, big right. Feeds. So, just a couple of high level notes on the player. We can drop in games played, games, assists, ground balls, things like that. But if you don't have any of that information, no problem. We'll just bring that John Smith person in, and then finally that play summary generated. So from here we can say, that's the general gist of it. But then we can also open that up into the full viewer, like we were seeing over on the play designer.
No, yeah, this is really cool. I didn't know there was a official scouting report feature on the app. But I did something similar. I put a couple of plays together and shared it to a buddy who I was helping scout for one of his games. So using Lacrosse Lab. So it's super cool. And I think it's great for scouting. You can put something quick together of what they're doing, but something that you want to do. So I love the scouting report feature. I'm glad that it's an official feature, within the software.
Yeah. Yeah. Really what we found ourselves doing, especially when we get into like the message board or the team schedule, what we do really well is the play designer. And so we want to make sure that we're maximizing the use for the play designer, right? So it comes in perfectly when we're talking about scouting reports. If you just want to jot up their man up offenses, their general 6-on-6 motions, things like that.
I think it's super cool that you can add links to video as well. That's elite. If you're a high level high school team or a college team that's really diving into the scout, is it useful for a U12 game? No, you're probably not scouting your opponent too well. But if you're a high school program, college program, this is something that puts it all in a clean place that your players literally can look at on their phone after class and study on their own time. If needed, or even after your official team event, hey, look at this again before the game. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And then actually going back to our conversation earlier on where are those pieces of accountability built in. So as players start coming in, you may have seen momentarily, there was kind of that prompt of like, hey, you just published the scouting report. Do you now want to share it out with your guys? So that would send out an email, or that would put out a message on the message board where everyone would get a notification, and that becomes part of the main event. So as guys start coming in, you will see who's looking at the scouting report, who's not. The world of technology has grown leaps and bounds since I played, but I remember, in college, walking out of the locker room and, coach handed us these like 40-page packets of,
same. I still have them.
And,
I still have them in a binder. I reference back to them, for different play ideas and what. So I know I got a couple of binders full of scouting reports.
Yeah. So but the unfortunate thing on the paper reports is you don't necessarily know who's paying attention, who's not, until
for sure
you probably got scored on
until it's too late.
Yeah. So that's the scouting report. The other piece I'll dig into here is the practice planning capability. And so we referenced this while we were looking at the deck. But in the same way, we want to show this in the email reminder. What we'll do here, and I'll just do some high level stuff. We'll call this phase 1, duration 15 minutes. Warm up. For my personal experience, since the majority of my coaching background has been in the club space where we had 2 practices, usually the way that I would run things were the first practice of the week was going to be transition focused. The second practice of the week was going to be more even 6-on-6 stuff so that we can button everything up before game day. And so, what we're doing here is basically building out these time blocks, right? So I've got phase one where we're just going to do some warm-ups. Phase two, going to be another 20 minutes. But again, anytime that we see this ad drill or play, we're going to call on our team playbook so we can pull in, like West Jenny or something like that. But then, what I found myself is that a lot of practice sessions seem to repeat each other, at least the skeleton of it. So we also have templates, right? And so I can pull in my transition template, which is going to be 115 minutes. Maybe I want to spend a little bit more time, refining. The 6-on-6 is going to be a little bit more open-ended. So I'm leaving myself 20 minutes where I want to do like our scouting report for that week, right? So always kind of baking in some time where I can make adjustments and fine tune the practice plan, but still have the high level skeleton, which is, maybe going to carry over pretty consistently from practice to practice.
Cater would not allow. I don't know if you listen. I know you said you listened to a couple of our episodes. Cater is down to, he's got 17 minutes. He's got 13 minutes. According to him, it's not going to be an even 115. And there's going to be no room. I know maybe you're planning for
water is 47 seconds.
47 seconds. So I hope this is dialed in enough for you, Coach Cater.
Yeah. So so from there we can save it. Again, it becomes part of the practice plan or the practice event where any of these links will take me over to the main page, and we can, or the playbook rather, and we can see what we're going to be running at practice. Right. And then so finally, to kind of tie all this back together, right? So one, we see that we've got a little bit of activity happening on the home screen. This is just because we've got an event upcoming. But what we can do on the home screen is, again, going back to whether we want to post to just coaches or the whole team, tying this all together, like, let's be ready. And since Syracuse is our newest play, we got to make sure everyone's ready to run this for practice, and we can attach that practice event that we were just mentioning, and we'll click post. And so now that becomes the first thing that everyone sees. I got my phone next to me. It's going to vibrate here in a second. Actually, my watch just vibrated saying that coach just posted to the message board. All of my players can come in RSVP. They can flip over to that practice plan that we were just looking at. And so, you've kind of got everything tied together that way.
Dialed in. Yeah, the mountain men are going to be dialed in April. Let's go.
That's right. Well, hopefully we're clicking on all cylinders in May.
Well, hey, in Minnesota, as long as you're clicking on all cylinders by June, like you got until June. Yeah, I think sections start end of May, early June. So you got some time. As long as you're dialed all in right. by June, everyone makes playoffs.
That's
it. No, it's a new season.
So that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the application. But again, we've got a really active user base that is constantly feeding us with ideas. So we've got a healthy backlog, but usually what we try to do while we're in season is keep our roadmap pretty empty so that we can act really quickly on user feedback, right? So for the listeners, if you guys get in there and start playing around and you see something that you would adjust or want to fine tune a little bit, usually we can be pretty responsive to those things, while we're in season, and then we'll leave the rest of the year to do more of the foundational stuff that we like to work on.
No, I love it. So, for the down the alley listeners, they're seeing this, they're going to be coaching a youth team or hopefully a couple of high school coaches, hear this and are impressed. What are the next steps for them?
Yeah. So again, anyone can create a free account at lacrosselab.com. With the free account, you get 10 plays, so you can get familiar, get comfortable, make sure that it's right for you and your team. And then from there, right, it's kind of your standard software application. So if you decide that it's something you like, you can go ahead and we'll take your credit card through the application, sign up, and that'll give you access to the tool. One thing that we also like to focus on is we know, especially for the high school season, lacrosse is a seasonal sport until we get into the club world, right? So especially for the high school coaches, if you need this from, March through June, you can sign up month to month, end your subscription, pause your subscription. We're not going to charge you for the time that you're down. And then when next season rolls around, you can start your subscription back up. All your plays will be saved, and you can keep running that way as well. But yeah, anyone can go in, create a free account, get comfortable with the play designer, and from there, hopefully, this demo has given you insight into what's behind that paywall.
Love it. Love it. And is there a down the alley code or something? Did we get that dialed in yet?
We don't. We can include it in the show notes.
We'll throw in the show notes. Eric will send me something over, so I'll throw all that. I'm sure a link or for a code of some sort. So, no, cool. I got a bunch of questions answered for me. I learned how to actually do the little curve thing on the computer, not just the iPad. I learned about the scouting report. Didn't know you had scouting reports, and you can link video to the scouting reports. So, I'm glad I sat through this and went through it fully with you. I learned a lot playing around on it, but this was a great deeper dive into, all the little things that are going to make a huge difference for coaches at every level.
Great.
Any last things that you want to throw in, that last nuggets or anything?
I had my bullets written out, so I think I touched on everything.
Sweet. Who are you coaching right now?
My son in the backyard.
Nice.
Great. I've got 3 young kids, all of them under 5 years old. And
you're
all
in
3
one.
of their birthdays are in the month of June. So at least in the meantime, until they pull me back into the game,
Okay.
Lacrosse is going to be just happening in the backyard.
Nice. I know you've been doing club, and did you coach high school in your area too, or just been doing a lot of youth and club?
Yeah, mostly youth and club. Right.
Cool.
So my oldest will be 5 in June. So he's definitely got a stick in his hands.
Yeah.
Ripping corners, but yeah, I think it's only a matter of time before we get a helmet on his head too.
Oh yeah. Cool. Well, enjoy the backyard. And weather's got to be better where you're at. I know you stopped in Minnesota and you're like, never again. We gave you a bad introduction to our state.
Yeah, no, I just won't mention that it was like 85 yesterday and sunny.
Well, supposedly, I'm not going to believe it, but supposedly better weather is around the corner for us in Minnesota, where a lot of the listeners are in the Midwest in general. So
yeah, well, good luck to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you again for the introduction, and hopefully we get a bunch of Minnesota coaches and youth coaches up with Lacrosse Lab.
Yep. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.